Every pastor has done this. You've gone home from church, but you really didn't go home. I mean, physically you did, but emotionally, even spiritually, you're not there. I mean, you left the building, all the crowds left the building, the volunteers have grabbed lunch, but you're still there, especially mentally and emotionally, refreshing the giving dashboard, waiting for the numbers to come in. Will today's giving be enough, you wonder? Enough to pay staff, enough to keep ministry moving, enough to make the budget? Man, I have been there, and I know that tension really, really well. I mean, in fact, in my early pastoral career, I spent most Sunday afternoons in that mental, emotional loop. Some of you know this, but when I first became a lead pastor, it was a revitalization opportunity. We had $400 in the bank on my first Sunday. And so you better believe that I was checking those giving numbers every day, not even just every Sunday. And I kept that habit up for a very long time, much longer than was actually even necessary. And I'll tell you this, it was not healthy, and it certainly was not restful. It wasn't sustainable. Financial pressure, though, right, might be the heaviest pressure that pastors carry because it's not just about the numbers. I mean, oftentimes it's about survival. It's about stewardship. It's about feeling responsible for something eternal with very temporal constraints. When you combine that kind of spiritual weight with like a budget reality, it can crush. It can crush even the strongest of church leaders. And I hate that this is true, but most churches kind of live in perpetual financial tension. And to a point, we've almost accepted it as just normal. The problem is the pressure isn't even always about growth, is it? Most pastors that I know feel pressure and stress just trying to maintain where they are, to keep the lights currently on, to keep the current staff paid, to keep what's currently happening ministry funded. Meanwhile, the calling, though, of ministry keeps pushing you and us outward. We're supposed to reach more people, expand programs, and deepen discipleship. But every one of those goals carries, you guessed it, a price tag. So Sunday after Sunday, the offering becomes, and I hate this, but it almost feels like a referendum on my leadership. And instead of kind of day-to-day worship, Sunday becomes a scoreboard. No wonder so many pastors lose their Sabbath to anxiety. If that's you, if you are leading under the weight of offering pressure, let's talk about how to relieve some of it. First thing you got to do, you have to keep the mission, which I know sounds simple, but just hang with me. When financial pressure, when it rises, it is easy for your mission to drift. And it's very slow and subtle, but the church's mission morphs into make sure we survive. And you would never say that out loud, right? You would never stand on the stage and say, hey, we exist to survive financially, right? But it happens behind the scenes, behind the curtain, subtly. And when giving slows down, funding often becomes the mission, and when that happens, guess what? Generosity actually dries up. Not because people don't care, but because they can sense the shift. So people don't want to fund survival. They want to fuel purpose. So refocus your messaging and your mental mindset. You have to help people see how their giving is advancing the mission, not how it saves the budget. Okay, second, you have to have a plan for generosity. Okay, giving doesn't happen by accident. You can't grow generosity accidentally. Hope is not a strategy. A strong kind of generosity plan speaks directly to different giving categories in your church. I cover this extensively with the churches and clients that I work with, the pastors I work with. You can just go to gavinadams.com. I do webinars on this. So this is a topic I talk a lot about. Let me give you a very quick overview. I want to help you have a financial giving plan that is not for your church, but for segments of your church that covers your church. There are several categories that we want to speak specifically to. Non-givers, right? They need a reason to trust you financially. First-time givers, they often need some clarity. Occasional givers, they need to grow in consistency. Regular givers need vision beyond them so a plan can be a part of their giving. And then, of course, our high-capacity givers, well, they often just need some trust and alignment. When you speak to everyone the same way, you know what happens, right? You miss everyone the same way. So having a segmented giving plan lets you disciple different kinds of givers through their next steps. So you can do it intentionally, and by the way, you can do it relationally. There's a lot more to say about that. Let me know if you want to learn more about how I coach people on this. Quick caveat, the churches that I work with see an average of 15 to 40% growth in revenue by implementing an intentional segmented giving plan. And by the way, it's baked into discipleship, so it doesn't become the mission of your church. Okay, number three, third thing you got to do. You have to execute the plan over time and make it better as you do it. Okay, here, this is so critical, and this seems like common sense, but I have to say it. Talking about generosity won't change anything. Okay, having a plan won't change anything. Execution is what changes things. And come on, listen, too many churches have meetings about generosity, but they never really build momentum. And the reason is they don't follow through. You can't have a generosity plan, try it on Sunday, and then on Monday go, well, that didn't work as well as we thought. That's just not how plans work. That's not how systems work. I mean, a generosity plan is really a system, and systems help solve long-term problems and over time will keep short-term problems from happening. But great systems don't often solve a short-term problem. So if you're thinking as this is a quick fix, well, there are no silver bullets for this. We've got to put a plan in place. And by the way, we have to execute it. Now, this is hard for us, and I get it because Sundays come really fast, right? Ministry is so demanding, but consistency can build trust, and trust is what ultimately, by the way, builds generosity. So even if you have to start small, start and stay with your plan long enough to learn what's working, tweak what's not, and then grow it. Okay, fourth thing that you need to think about doing. Evaluate your expenses ruthlessly. Okay, creating a financial margin isn't just about increasing revenue. Often it's about being smarter with how we spend money. Listen, every church I have ever interacted with, worked with, been a part of, right, can find something that is being funded that probably should be cut. I mean, every program, by the way, was created for a purpose. And in that moment, it really was on purpose. But that doesn't mean that it's still serving a purpose. Listen, healthy churches, they spend money with intentionality, not inertia. Right? When you cut the unnecessary stuff, you begin to create some margin, and margin is the enemy of pressure. Margin's the enemy of pressure. This is the moment to look for. As you look at your budget, here's what you have to ask. Is this expense still effective? Does this still serve our mission? Okay, fifth thing, let's keep going. Fifth thing, you have to teach the tithe. Teach the tithe. Okay, you can call it whatever you want, and there's lots of different ways to think about tithing. So is it 10%? Is it gross net? I mean, again, all of these things. Jesus didn't talk about tithing. I know, he didn't. I'm kind of glad he didn't, because what would he have said? I mean, he talked about murder, and then he said, but if you hate somebody, you've murdered them. So what would he have said? You've heard it said 10%, I say 90. I don't know what he would have said, right? However, here's what we do know. Generosity, by the way, right? Generosity is not natural in our culture because consumerism, that's what's natural, right? So if you're not teaching on generosity, listen, you're not discipling people in one of the most critical areas of faith. It's almost like spiritual malpractice, guys. So you should use your sermons, use small groups and personal conversations to shape how people view money. Listen, remember, generosity, it's not about guilt. It's about gratitude and opportunity. It's about financial peace. And we help people lean into God with generosity. It's really critical to their faith journey. So we have to teach it. We have to challenge people to take those steps. And then last thing, we have to model the way. I mentioned earlier that when I became the lead pastor of Woodstock City Church, back then it was called Watermark Church, we had $400 in the bank. My wife and I actually personally covered payroll that first week. And then, 2 weeks later, we did it again. That's one of the biggest problems with payroll. It happens every 2 weeks. We didn't do this for applause, obviously, but we did it because we absolutely believed in this church and we believed in the mission. In fact, nobody even knew we did it for a very long time. I mean, years and years and years later. But at some point, I felt like enough time had passed, and I just told the story to our church. And again, I didn't do it to brag, but I wanted to show that generosity begins with leadership, and that I have moral authority to talk about what I'm asking you to do. When you teach from example, you're leading with moral authority, and that is really important to have. If you want your people to be generous, you have to model it. It doesn't mean you advertise it, but come on, listen. The people in your church, they kind of get a sense of your engagement. And it will never be published, and it shouldn't be, and you shouldn't every Sunday you should probably never, ever, hardly ever talk about it. I've only talked about it once, but it's important to talk about. It's important to do it because people will feel it when you do. You may have never kind of fully escaped the offering pressure, and I get that, but you're probably never going to fully escape it. There's a little bit of financial pressure that comes with just leading anything, especially a church, but you can change how it affects you, and you can change how it shapes your leadership. So here's what you do. You keep the mission the mission. You build a generosity plan. You execute it with consistency over time. And then you lead your church to financial health by focusing on things like faithfulness and expense management, right? Because the church's mission, come on, it is too important to be held hostage by a spreadsheet. So don't let that happen. Put some things in place today to help grow revenue, create margin, and the most important part, build deeper, stronger disciples.